Wasabi guys, coming back at you with another 10 underrated commander cards. Thank you guys so much for helping me reach 200 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already. So let's get on to this here. First we have Deserted Temple, a land that reads, it taps for 1 colorless, and also you can pay 1 generic of any mana, and you can tap it to untap a target land. So that right there is just amazing. We have so many lands that tap for multiple mana. We have Gaia's Cradles, Nykthos Shrine of Nyx, Cabal Coffers, those types of lands. And of course, if you combine it with, say, Rings of Brighthearth, you have an infinite mana combo right there. So it's quite interesting. You have some sort of combos that you can do outside of this too. You can interact with other lands on tapping. You can get extra uses out of, say, maybe a Cavern of Souls if you want to, again, have another creature be uncounterable, stuff like that. It has its utility purpose there. It's very good. One of the most underrated utility lands, in my opinion. I think it should see way more play than it does. Next we have Throne of the God Pharaoh, the newest card on this list, and it's from Amonkhet. Definitely one of those cards that I would have expected to see way more commander play. I know Amonkhet definitely wasn't too strong in the commander realm. I mean, there were cards like Hepatra, and they had some other good stuff in there, but overall, I think when it comes to just good staples, I think this should have been one of those cards that could see way more play than it initially did. And I think as we move on, I think more and more people will start to see its potential. But it kind of falls into that category of, say, Altar of the Brood, where it's a very good, a very cheaply costed artifact that does something pretty good. It does something really good. When you have tapped creatures at the end step, there's so many decks that interact with tapping and untapping creatures, or just decks that go wide in general. I mean, that's ridiculous, man. You're going to be knocking out players if you're using one of those more aggressive strategy-based decks. If you have a lot of tapped creatures, it's going to benefit you the most. And honestly, playing this main phase 2 and just sitting on it till your end of turn, it's 2 mana. It's very cheap. I think that it's on the verge of being one of those cards that's just very busted, but honestly, it hasn't seen enough play to really justify calling it busted yet. But it could fall into that category in the future. I think it's definitely something worth considering, especially if you're playing a creature-based deck or any deck, really. You could put this in Breya and have good artifact recursion to bring it back if it happens to be targeted out. So it's an interesting card. Next we have Mystic Remora. Now, if you think Rhystic Study is a pain in the ass, this is a little bit more fair. It does have the cumulative upkeep of 1, so if you don't pay that, then it's gone. It only works for non-creature spells, so if your opponent casts a non-creature spell, they have to pay 4 mana or let you draw a card. Honestly, that's never going to happen. If you find anybody who pays the 4, it's likely because they have infinite mana or an extreme excess of mana that they can't do anything with. Most of the time, early game, you're just going to be drawing a bunch of cards because there are a ton of non-creature spells your opponents are going to be playing. You're talking like Mana Rocks, Soul Rings, the Signets, stuff like that your opponents kind of have to play, or else they risk just being behind in the game. And they're going to give you a bunch of card draw, and the cumulative upkeep, it does count. It does kind of stack up here over time, but it comes to the point where you can just let it go and just be satisfied with it, with whatever cards you happen to draw. It's definitely interesting, and it makes blue decks even faster. So it's a little bit more fair. It's cheaper costed than Rhystic Study, but I feel like it's a bit more fair. Next we have Jace the Living Guildpact. Out of a lot of the Planeswalkers, he's definitely one of the most underrated. His plus isn't too terribly good. I mean, it is card draw fixing. You can put something in your graveyard if you're playing a graveyard-based deck. But other than that, the plus isn't too powerful. The minus, being able to bounce a non-land permanent, it's not too terribly powerful of removal, but bounce removal is still technically removal. You can help someone out if you're dealing with indestructible creatures or just indestructible permanents or just any type of permanent that needs to go right now, and you can deal with it later maybe. And then the ult is really the best part about him. So if you can put him in Super Friends and you get him to ult, having everybody shuffle their graveyards and their hands into their library, having everybody shuffle, you're the only one that draws 7 cards. You are the only one that gets to draw the 7 cards. They're stuck with no hands, and you're the only one that gets to do anything because you have the hand there. And I think it's a very good ult, but it's arguably the best thing about him, though. The other 2 abilities are kind of iffy, so I can understand why he hasn't seen as much play. Sort of one of those forgotten Planeswalkers from M15. Again, that's why core sets need to come back. We need more of these just good utility Planeswalkers. Next we have Thirstouts. Now there is a lot of bounce removal in blue, but what we don't typically see in blue is just something that just bounces it back to the deck, either on the top or the bottom. They do have the choice of which cards they want to put on the bottom and which ones they want to put on the top in whatever order they want to. The good thing about it though is that they do have to wait until they get those cards. They do have to have some good card draw to get them all back. It's a very good and very underrated card, I feel. We have cards like Evacuation, which just, they bounce all creatures back to their hands, which is good enough, but this does it to an opponent who's attacking. So yeah, it is a bit more specific in the timing, and you have to wait for that type of situation to arise. And some sort of attack triggers are still going to go off regardless of whether or not you play this, so keep that in mind. But it's still a great way to deal with the most aggressive strategies, and this is what blue does really well. Next we have a pretty epic commander option here. We have Shihao-Dun the One Eye. I believe that's how you say his name there. But Horsemanship is one of those abilities that it was Portal 3 Kingdoms and that's it. So we haven't seen anything like it. There's been cards that have been reprinted in the commander decks. We haven't seen any new cards with Horsemanship for the sheer fact that it's just a very unfair ability, being able to swing in knowing that there really aren't any other Horsemanship creatures able to block you. Very, very powerful, and being able to just say that your creatures are practically, might as well just read unblockable, because no one's going to be able to block it unless they're also playing a Horsemanship deck, which that's very unlikely to ever happen unless you get together with some friends and say, hey, let's just all play Horsemanship decks. He is very good. In addition to that, though, he also has the ability to, before you attack, you can then have him go to the graveyard and get a black card from your graveyard to your hand. So having that utility, you can get some very good combos here with black decks, and you just have some awesome cards that you can bring back. We're talking like Living Death, we're talking just great good old-fashioned black cards here. Reanimates, Demonic Tutors, who knows, good black cards that you can just fill your deck with, and you just constantly reuse with Shihao-Dun, get him back over and over again. Pretty awesome. In addition to that, Horsemanship is just a bitch to deal with. Put a bunch of equipment on him, put some enchantments, give him infect, do whatever you want to do. Very difficult to deal with, I think, as far as Voltron decks go. I think people tend to shy away from Horsemanship because it's very unfun, and it doesn't really pose much of a challenge, because you have to be able to deal with it, and all you really have to do is throw like a Lightning Greaves on him, and suddenly it becomes, hey, can anyone deal with Lightning Greaves? And then, can anyone deal with Horsemanship? And that's that. So it's very difficult to deal with something like a Horsemanship commander, and he's definitely the best one if I had to say so myself. But anyway, going on here, we have Citan Krosan Protector. Now again, I don't know how you pronounce that name either, but still, Druid Tribal, it's one of those awkward things where I think people would rather just play Elf Tribal, because there's so many elves that are also druids. So you have a bit of a crossover here. However, I feel that this is very good. I mean, this ability is borderline Azami in green. Azami, if you don't know, she's the one that lets you tap wizards to draw cards. This one lets you tap druids for green mana. I mean, that's great. A lot of awesome druids, and this is one of those tribes that I feel like people overlook a lot. When you talk about green commanders, I mean, we're talking about Omnath Locus of Mana. I feel like this one sort of takes a back seat. What people don't understand, though, is that it's not like just giving it the ability to tap for green. It's that you can tap any druid at any time, so you can do it as soon as you drop it out there. So it allows for some pretty aggressive plays and some very aggressive ramp, and definitely if you throw in some good card draw in there, you can make a very powerful and very explosive deck here with Citan. Next we have Yasova Dragonclaw. Now, I can understand why she may not be seeing a ton of play. She is technically 3 colors, so you can play her as a teamer commander, and her ability is pretty much active treason until end of turn. They get it back, so basically the build you want to build around her would be throwing some equipment in there, pump her up as much as you can, and then just use her ability, and then use a sack outlet to get rid of them. Basically stuff like Birthing Pod, Goblin Bombardment, Greater Good, just great sack outlets in these colors, mainly in green and red. You don't really have much in blue, that's the only downside, but you can also just flicker it out too, instead of having the sack outlet, though, blue does have options like Deadeye Navigator that you can just blink and return back under your control, so the trigger fails to resolve there and you get to keep the creature. So you have those options there in blue, and it's just a very fun combat trick type of deck. Otherwise, pretty decent commander option, although I feel like she does see a lot more play as one of the 99 in, say, decks like Animar. But pretty decent option nevertheless. Next we have a big son of a bitch here. We have Thromach the Insatiable and Devour X, where X is the number of creatures you devoured. That is absolutely just insane. You're going to get a ton of +1/+1 counters on this guy, and he's just going to be massive. And usually I don't think that creatures that just get huge are great. They're too good in Commander because they don't have evasion. They don't have ways of dealing a lot of damage easily. But really, what you're doing is you're making a Voltron style commander, and you're going to be throwing in tokens, stuff like that you can get over and over again, replenish your side of the board with a bunch of creature tokens, and then just sack them all to Thromach and get massive. And it doesn't even have to be that many creatures either. If you devour 6, I mean, that's 6 times 6 there, that's 36. So that's enough power right there. If you give it unblockable or trample, it's going to be difficult to stop it without just killing someone. So it presents that type of challenge of first of all, you have to get enough creature tokens to make him big enough, so you need to worry about the setup. That's the only downside about him. Other than that, though, once you get him out and you start swinging, you're going to be killing players one at a time. He's just that powerful, and I don't think enough people know about him yet as a commander option. I think he's just that big, and the downside is, yeah, he does need trample, he does need evasion, but there are plenty ways to equip him with things, enchant him. There's a ton of options that you can choose in red and green to give trample, to give haste, to give all kinds of abilities that just help your combat efforts here. But an interesting option nevertheless. And last, we have Dragon Broodmother. Main thing about her, she also has the Devour mechanic here. You get to Devour 2 when the 1/1 red and green dragon creature tokens enter the battlefield, so you can choose to have little 1/1s or you can choose to have massive dragons. So you have that option. If you're playing tokens, you can go wide, you can do that. I really like her in Prosh, Sky Raider of Care. I think she's definitely one of the better dragons if I had to say for tokens. I don't think a lot of people have considered her yet in general just for dragon based decks, but having the ability to pump out dragon tokens each upkeep, it's not each one of your upkeeps, it's each upkeep. So if left alone, you can just net a ton of dragon tokens, and if you have doubling season effects, if you have parallel lives effects, you're going to be getting even more tokens and even more opportunities to hit the Devour trigger, which is technically, it is optional. You don't have to sacrifice creatures when you have Devour there, so you can just keep building an army of 1/1 dragon tokens, which is hilarious. And Anthem City, if you want it, just a lot of options here with creature tokens and sack triggers. That Prosh Sky Raider of Care deck fits really well into there. Fits well in just Jund period. I just like the sack triggers and the creature tokens and just getting Devourer. I mean, it's just a great mechanic for Jund in general, and just Gruul too. So you have that option as well. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this video here of 10 underrated commander cards. I will try to get more of these out to you guys if you enjoy them. Please subscribe, like, and share this video. Void here, signing off. Hope you guys enjoy your day.